Welcome everyone to our webinar today. My name is Stephanie Ivick. I'm the Content Marketing Manager here at eLearning Brothers. We have a really exciting webinar about Wheel of Fortune and game design for you today. But first I'll go over just a few housekeeping items. We are recording this and you'll receive the recording via email tomorrow, so you can keep an eye out for that. We are taking questions during the webinar, so any questions you have, just put them in the questions panel and we will get to them. If we run out of time, we'll do our best to continue the conversation offline. You can post in the Rockstars community or message us. We'll get to you. And now, our guests today are Carrie Weiser, Learning Experience Designer, and Julia Karen Dieter, Game Designer from the Game Agency. They'll be showing us the new Wheel of Fortune game and how to unlock its full potential. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the time over to Carrie and Julia. Carrie, you should have the screen sharing power now.
Got it. Thank you. So Julie and I are really excited to show this to you today. If I can get over to the right window. There we go. So the reason Wheel of Fortune is so cool is that it has 3 different types of puzzles, so you can match it to all different types of objectives and audiences and purposes. So that's what we're going to go through today. But before we talk about all the different design ways that you could use it, we wanted to demonstrate it for you so you could see what we were talking about. So there are 3 types of puzzles. There's the spin round, which is what you're probably used to if you've ever watched Wheel of Fortune. You spin the wheel and you guess letters. One of the things that we've added is a solve bonus, because in learning, we didn't want to penalize people who actually knew the answer right away. So if they do know the answer, they can solve it and still get some money, even if they don't want to keep spinning the wheel. And then just like in the game show, you can buy vowels. There's also a toss-up round. Again, like in the game show, this one doesn't have the wheel. This is timed. So your letters appear one by one, and then you just try to solve the puzzle before the time runs out. And then we also have a bonus round, which usually comes last in the game show, but you can put it wherever you want to in our version of the game. You start with a few letters. In the game show, it's always RSTLNE, but you can customize that based on the vocabulary that you're trying to get across, the terminology or whatever. So I wanted to show you kind of what it looked like to play. This is the spin round. You'll see the category pops up and then the puzzle populates. You can spin the wheel. You can click and drag. Or, there we go. And you get the money amount that pops up. And then you can pick a letter. You can see here that the vowels are grayed out because you need to buy those, but you can pick any other letter. You can spin again. If you're having trouble clicking and dragging like I just did, you can quick spin instead. And then again, you can pick a letter. If you pick the wrong letter, one that's not in the puzzle, it will flip over to what we call our virtual helpers, which are, they stand in for the competitors in the actual game. And they'll give you clues. They'll guess letters that may or may not be in the puzzle to kind of narrow down your choices to make it easier. So you could spin again. And once you have enough money, you can buy a vowel. And when you know the answer, you can solve the puzzle. You can click it on here, or you can go and do it on the keyboard. I'll do it here. And then you get the solve. And you'll see your money adds up. And now you're completed. Another thing that you can do in this game is you can add info cards. So if you wanted to then follow up on what you've just taught or provide information that leads into the next puzzle, you can do that between puzzles. So it doesn't have to just be puzzle after puzzle after puzzle. You can intersperse some learning content. And then I'll quick show you a toss-up because those go pretty quick. And then I'll quickly show you what it looks like under the hood. So again, you'll see that this is filling in the letters as you go along. And then when you know what the puzzle is, you can stop and solve. I'm going to leave that for now rather than having you watch me type them all in. But here is what it looks like in the admin portal. So you can see that this is the spin puzzle that we started with. The second piece is the info card or the learning material, and then we have the toss up. So we tried to make this really, really easy to use, really, really easy to put everything in. When you have the puzzle text over here, it populates right in the puzzle, and then if you were to add more text to it, it will move around so that it fits best. And you can also see that you can add your category, you can set the time that people have to make decisions, you can decide whether or not you want to use that solve bonus, you can decide whether or not you want to include bankruptcies, which is a way to make the game more forgiving if you want to do that. And then you can set those virtual helpers, those stand-in for your competitors, easy, normal, or hard. That just is basically the level of hints that easy, normal is basically the level that you're going to give to people. Toss-up is similar. It fills out the board the same way. You can shuffle the tiles to make them appear in a different order, and you can hit play to see how it will appear for the learner. And then for bonus round, also same type of thing. You can choose what letters you reveal. You can choose how many consonants you give to people to see and how many vowels that people can guess. So there's all sorts of settings that you can do here to customize it to your content. But as you can see, it's really easy to build, but then there are some things that you kind of have to think about from a learning perspective as far as turning that content into puzzles that work well and will actually be paced well and challenge learners at the right level and not get them frustrated. And that's where Julia comes in, because she has a lot of game design ideas that will kind of inform our learning design and make this more of a fun and engaging experience instead of a frustrating experience. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julia.
Okay. Thanks, Gary. Let's see. I should see my screen. Right. So exactly, as you've just seen from Carrie, we've tried to make the CMS really, really easy to use, and we allow you to really customize each component of the rounds for the game so that you can really tailor that content and fit it really nicely into the game. So much so that you might actually be tempted to think that that is all it is. Kind of like you have your learning content, and just like Trivia or Jeopardy, you could just take your learning content and place it into the game and it'll just fit wonderfully like a nice snug cat in a box. Right, so Wheel of Fortune is a different game than Jeopardy or Trivia, and because of that, you kind of have to pay attention to the different types of rounds that you're going to be using and think about how the user is experiencing those rounds in order to customize that learning content and so it fits really, really nice inside of the game. So again, as Carrie was talking about, we have three kind of engaging modes that we use based on the game show, but the CMS allows you to use them in any way you want. You can use as many toss-ups as you want in whatever order. That's all very flexible and up to you. But as she said, it's not as easy as just taking your trivia questions and then just kind of plugging it into the game and having it work. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of tips from a game design perspective that'll help you when thinking about crafting this learning experience and using all that Wheel of Fortune has to offer in terms of the flexibility and the customization that you can do to make these courses really, really engaging. So I am Julia Karanditar. I'm a game designer at the game agency, and I come from the commercial video game space, so that's my history. And in commercial video games, you might think that maybe you don't know much about game design, but there's actually a lot of crossover between game design and instructional design. Hopefully these tips are going to be informative for when you make your own content. But for game designers, we kind of are in this system one thinking, right? When we design an experience for our games, we're thinking about it through the user's experience, right? So when we design a video game, it's not about like coming up with an idea for a game. That has nothing to do with it. It's about, does a player know what they're doing? Do they know where they're going? What are the choices they're having? What are they engaging with? Are they having trouble? Is something too challenging for them and they're getting frustrated? Is something too easy for them and they're getting bored? Like how are they experiencing this world? And because we're targeting that like intuition and instinct, most of what we have, the tools that we use in our disposal are designed for that system and that system. So we use a lot of priming, we use a lot of schemas, we use a lot of different tools and techniques in order to get our users fast brains to help the player navigate through our game system, right? I mean, we all think that, you know, we are rational creatures that will sit down and read a tutorial that's 5 pages long and like remember all of that information, but that's not how humans work, right? We're very, very instinctual, and we want to know things very, very quickly. And you know, game design is not that far away from other user experience design roles. So if you think about a product design, right, I need to look at that object and know, how do I pick it up? How do I hold it? How do I turn it on and off? I'm not going to read a manual about how to like pick up a tea kettle, right? I should look at the product and know, oh, that's where the handle is. I'm going to pick it up and this is how I pour it out, right? So it's always being within that fast brain mode and not the logical one. So this is a really good quote from Wix. UX is like a joke. If you have to explain it, it's not good, right? So design happens within that fast brain system. You might also be thinking, well, video games, great. What does that have to do with learning design? And I would argue that almost all video games are about learning, right? You're learning new challenges, you're learning new strategies, usually on how to play the game, right? Like how to defeat this boss in Zelda, how to make good color combinations so you can get a high score in Candy Crush, or how to, you know, work good economic systems so you can have like really big, you know, armies that can go out and conquer nation states in Civilization 5. There are really complex things that you can learn playing video games in order to know how to play the game, right? And how to continue those challenges. And as a game designer, our role is to try to teach those concepts, those strategies, those techniques slowly over the course of the whole game to our users. And the most important tool that we use is pacing. So it's also known as a flow state. And this is the idea that when you set a player in a bunch of, you know, whether it's a puzzle or a skill or a boss battle or something, you always want to have that challenge just above their comfort zone. You don't want to make it too hard, because if you make it too hard, you're going to make them anxious or frustrated. They're going to think, there's no way I can do this. This is too hard. I'm never going to get better at this. And they're going to disengage. So you want to avoid that. Likewise, you want to avoid getting it too easy, because then they're going to feel bored. This is beneath them, this is too easy, and they're going to disengage as well. So you really want to stay within that flow channel of just above their comfort zone. And that flow channel, of course, changes over time, right? As players get better at the skills that they're learning, whether that's like defeating a boss or whether that's about knowing the content or the material that you're teaching, you'll have to go and give them ever increasingly difficult puzzles over time, right? So that they always feel like they're just above their comfort zone. But notice that the line here in the flow channel is not straight, right? And this is where really game design or level design comes in. When you're mapping out these worlds and these experiences, it's really important to think about giving players challenges so that they're stretching even further away from their comfort zone, but then following up with letting them rest. So going well into their comfort zone and kind of giving them a break. And it's really important to provide breaks on the way up. If you think about video games, like a boss battle, for instance, there's an attack mode where the boss is attacking you, and that's a really intense, challenging moment in the game, right? You're trying to figure out how to survive. It's really, really involved and challenging. And then the boss will go in defense mode, and that allows you to regroup, to strategize, and to figure out what's your next move. And that's done on purpose, right? If you have to give breaks to your players, or they're going to feel frustrated. In a lot of ways, learning is kind of like lifting weights, right? You have to do it in sets. If you just keep lifting weights over and over and over again, you're going to kind of burn yourself into the ground. And it's the same thing with design and games as well. You have to give your players a rest. And this is kind of the really cool thing about Wheel of Fortune. Because of the different types of rounds, you can really map them to provide this structure. So you can increase those challenges, give players those breaks on the way up, and really craft a great experience to be within that flow channel so that your users stay really engaged throughout the entire process. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about each of the rounds and go over some strategies for placing content in. The first one I'm going to go over is the spin round, and by far I believe this is the most challenging to design for a designer. But it is also what you think of when you think of Wheel of Fortune, right? It's the round with the big wheel and everybody's cheering and there's so much excitement and there's so much energy around this round, right? And that's for good reason. There are kind of three main human conditions that drive the fun in Wheel of Fortune that make it a really successful and fun game to play and a really successful game show to watch. So the first one is the random spin, right? There's something compelling on a very fundamental level to most mammals about randomness, right? If you spin something, we kind of want to know what that outcome is. What's happening next? What's going to happen next? Are you going to land on bankruptcy? Or are you going to land on that $5,000 wedge? Like there's just something really compelling subconsciously about wanting to know the resolution of random outcomes. The second is the loss aversion. The amount builds over time. If I guess a letter correctly and I get $700 for guessing like a T, and then I spin again and I get two S's for 500, now I have 1,700. The amount that builds over time gives the perception of heaviness, of gratitude, right? There is a weight that happens with each consecutive decision that I make based on the fact that I have more of the amount and that I could lose it at any time, right? An example of this is like if I have $15,000, spinning that wheel seems a lot more risky than if I just started out on the game and I have no money at all, right? And the probabilities have not changed at all, but the perception of that has changed, right? I feel the threat of losing all of that money, and that is also very, very engaging. It's not only engaging for the players, it's also really engaging for spectators, and this is kind of where Wheel of Fortune as a game show kind of shows. If you think about other game shows, they use the same kind of methods, right? Like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? If someone like rises up and gets this all the way to like, you know, $500,000, and are they going to cut their losses and save that 500,000? Are they going to go for the $1 million question? And they might lose it all, and that feels really, really engaging, right? And the last one is the anticipation of a win. So in the game show, Wheel of Fortune, when you solve in a spin round, you're actually cutting your losses. You don't get any money for solving it. It's a way to kind of exit the game like, okay, I've had enough, 15,000 is fine. But for a lot of players who know how to play the strategy of the game, most of the contestants who are actually playing know the answer far in advance. And what they're doing is they're betting on the fact that they can earn a couple more $100 by guessing consonants still left in the puzzle before they exit out, before they decide to leave and cut their losses. And what this does is it actually extends the win level, the win state, right? I know what the answer is. I'm kind of, you know, playing my luck, but I can project what the answer is. I know what it is, and I know that I've kind of won the game, and it feels really good. In video games, they do this a lot as well. If you think about like big boss battles, right? You know, after you've done a long campaign, you're at the final boss, and you've attacked it, and it's down on its luck, and you got one more blow left before you win the whole game. A lot of time, designers will stretch out that experience, right? They'll slow down the animation and they'll extend it because it feels really good to just know that you see that light at the end of the tunnel. Like you can visualize yourself winning even though you have not yet done that, and that gives you a dopamine release. All right, so the problem though that makes this really challenging is that none of these things can actually provide clean assessment data, right? Having anything to do with randomness makes that data very muddy, right? You can't just say, well, so-and-so got like $10,000 in the spin round, and you know this other person got 5,000, so clearly the 10,000 person knows more. Well, you can't make that assessment, right? They might have just got lucky, right? Loss aversion, it's a very, very powerful feeling, but if it's tied to something outside of your control and you're being assessed, then most likely players are going to associate the feeling of being cheated by the game system instead of thinking that they have made a mistake themselves. And of course, the anticipation of a win, that's not good assessment data. If I know the answer before I actually like register the fact that I know the answer, then there's a mismatch there. You're not getting good data. But if we only use games for assessment, it traps us from using all that games can offer. And I think it's really important to remember that assessment is for information collection, right? It's important in coursework, right? You need to know whether somebody knows information before they learn, and then afterwards, have they retained that information a week later? Do they still know that information? Assessment is really, really critical, but assessment is not where the learning happens, right? The learning happens through trial and error, through play and practice. So these are kind of two different things. And games are these great tools to create a safe place to fail, right? Mistakes are an inevitable part, an important part of promoting, learning, and deeper understanding. So this screenshot here is from a game called The Parable of the Polygons. And it is a really short, like 5-minute video game that allows users to just play with cognitive subconscious bias preferences in terms of like statistics and seeing how that manifests in systemic racism, right? These are very, very complex systems about like human subconscious. And this game is a really great way of like allowing people to play with these mathematical probabilities and seeing the real world ramifications so they can get a better grasp about these forces that kind of shape our society. But this is a way better way of learning that than trying to read some sort of video or map of someone saying this is what is happening, right? Instead, you can actually play with those stats and see that happening, and that builds more connection than just reading a book about it. So when you're designing the spin round, keep in mind that this is not where you're going to get good assessment data. In fact, you don't really even want to communicate the fact that you're getting assessment here, right? Because this is a place for people to engage and have fun. They want to play the game, they want to enjoy themselves, and you would like to let that process happen, right? You don't want to give the sense that you're monitoring them or measuring them in any kind of way. And you might ask, well, then what's the point? Why use it? Well, because this is a really great way of introducing concepts and building a positive association with those concepts. The spin round is a perfect way of introducing a new topic, and then you could follow it up with an interstitial that'll explain like why this topic is important. Here are the 5 things you need to know about this topic, and this is why it matters to you, blah, 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 right? But that positive association is really important. Remember, we operate 95% of the time with a brain that is just scanning about, trying to make relationships and mapping connections very, very, very quickly. So I think having that positive association is a lot more powerful than we tend to give it credit. And this is also a good place to use the spin round in those breaks, right? You're letting players regroup, you're letting players experience this fun game before you ramp up more difficult challenges. And there's one more important tip to remember about the spin round that is kind of critical for integrating your content. And that is that learning content is going to appear harder in this mode. Again, this is not the same as trivia. If you're looking at that content in terms of the axis of difficulty just being on its face value of answering a question to an answer, you're going to actually skew that difficulty much harder. Why is that? Because players, even subconsciously, are actually applying a lot of strategies to play this game in this mode, right? Even if they don't realize it, they are thinking about wheel probabilities when they spin. And if they're really good Wheel of Fortune players, there's actually very complex strategies that are designed to build around how do you best guess letters, like what letters do you guess first, when do you buy a vowel, at what dollar amount on the wheel do you do pattern recognition letter probabilities or regular letter probabilities. There's these very complex systems that a player can use when playing the game. And that's important because of selective attention. Now, again, game design and learning design, there's a lot of overlap, so I'm sure most of you know about selective attention, but in case you don't and you've never seen this video before, I think it's really important for those who haven't seen it to play it in order to understand the relationship between why this is hard. Now, you might not hear the audio here, but that's fine. You can just read the instructions.
Pass the basketball. How many passes did you count? The correct answer is 15 passes. But did you see the gorilla? This video is from research by Daniel Simons.
Okay, so this video is basically showing that if you're focused on one thing, it's really, really hard to switch your focus to another thing, even if it's as obvious as somebody in a gorilla outfit thumping their chest in the middle of like our research video, right? So it's important to know that if your players are thinking about these strategies, again, even subconsciously, it's going to mean retaining the actual content question much more challenging to them. So as a recap for spinning the game, you want to, or the spin game round, you wanted to use it to introduce new concepts and drive that engagement and that positive association. Use common letters, words, and phrases. You can use any of, whatever words and phrases you want, but just know that users are going to be in this mode of thinking about letter probabilities. So if you use things that are a little more uncommon, it's going to mean that that content is going to appear more difficult than you might otherwise think it is. Right, short and simple categories. Players are going to be reading these quickly and they'll probably forget what the category is, again, because of the selective attention. Remember that the AI competitors, they provide hints and you can change the difficulty in the admin portal. Focus on the fun and novelty. Again, this is not the place to get good assessment data from. And allow fans of Wheel of Fortune to play up those strategies. So we did put a solve bonus on the amount so that we don't punish players. So again, in the game show, when you hit the solve bonus in the spin round, you're actually cutting your losses and you don't get any money. We wanted to avoid that. If people knew the answer, we wanted to reward them with the amount. And we actually made a very complex algorithm based on that so that the scoring amount for the solve bonus is just under what you could get if you were actually playing strategically the game. And we did that on purpose, because if people are fans of Wheel of Fortune, we should encourage them to enjoy and play the game, right? That we should encourage them to extend that anticipation of a win and feel that rush. That feels really good. Okay, questions here. I know that was quite a lot to go over. And I will be following up with the toss-up and the bonus round after this.
Thanks, Julia. We do have a couple questions kind of about Wheel of Fortune in general. Would you recommend using it for mostly reviewing content that people have already taken training on, or could it also be used to introduce completely new information?
I think it can be used for both. I think, again, thinking about it in terms of, even if it's just review, again, you're probably not in the mindset of the spin round particularly thinking about that that information. You're more like playing the game, but you're still building that positive relationship between the review information and what you're actually playing. So that reinforces this positive experience. In terms of new concepts, I think it's great because then it's like, da da da, here's what we're learning, play this spin game, isn't this fun? And then you can follow up with like, okay, what does this mean to you and why is it important? And you can use those interstitials as well.
Awesome. And then we had another question. If you're hosting a virtual training and you want to play a game at the end of the sessions, can everyone sign in and play together? I know we can do that with the live Jeopardy, but can you do that with Wheel of Fortune?
I know that that is being developed currently, but it's not available as of yet, at least as far as I know.
Well, stay tuned. It'll be coming soon. And in the meantime, you can play Jeopardy with everyone. And let's see, I think those are, can you do challenges where people compete against each other, or does it have to be single player mode?
Right now it's single player mode.
Okay.
But again, that's something we're reviewing, especially for hot seats, because it's just a natural fit. In the game show, you have 3 contestants vying for the same thing.
Yeah.
But you can choose to display a leaderboard. So if you wanted people to kind of register, they could look and see how they stack up on the leaderboard.
Yeah,
so
they could play individually and see which of their coworkers did terribly, which would be me normally, and who's winning. All right, those are all the questions for right now.
Okay, are you guys still able to see my screen or? think. Yes, okay, great. All right, so moving on to toss-up. So to understand toss-up, we kind of need to know how it's used in the game show. And toss-up is used in order to determine who goes first in the spin rounds, and it's used as a way to gate the bonus round as well. So usually players will need to have to win each of the toss-ups in order to get access to the bonus round. The way toss-up works is that you get a question, you have to solve it as fast as possible. The first person that buzzes in to answer stops the letters from displaying over time, and they're able to ask the question. And of course, if they get it wrong, then it moves on to the next contestant. But the way that toss-up is set up makes it a great mode to offer a really hard challenge. The letters are revealed to me over time, so I won't get stuck. Of course, the dollar amount decreases, so I'm motivated to continue to do, answer as fast as possible, but I don't have to sit there trying to like scratch my brain to figure out like, well, what is this? I'm really stumped. The perception here is that the game is that I need to know the answer, right? There's no other strategy, so you don't have a problem with the selective attention like you do in the spin round. And of course, the problem has my full attention, so if you write like a long category, I'm going to read that, remember it, and apply it to whatever I'm solving. And so because of this, the toss-up is really perfect for those peak challenges. If you want to stretch them just above their comfort zone or even more so, toss-up is the place to do it. Toss-up is also great if you have a really strange word or a product name that maybe has a lot of X's or something, or letters outside of the probability space. People are not thinking about letter probability in the toss-up round, so that's a really great place to put those kind of words and phrases. Toss-up is also really great for assessment. So if you do want to use assessment within the game structure that you have provided, toss-up is the place to do it. And I also just want to take a little bit of time to talk about failure perception, because it's a really important concept in video game design. Video game designers are constantly thinking about how people perceive failure, because failure happens all the time in video games, right? You get stuck, you don't make enough matches in Candy Crush, or you get, the boss defeats you or whatever, and you have to like figure out what you did wrong and continue and learn to get better. So a lot of times when game designers are designing a game, they're thinking about what is the perception of failure. And what you're looking for as a game designer is trying to understand where your users are experiencing. And so if they say something like, I'm bad at this kind of game, that's a red flag for us designers, because it means that they understand that they're making mistakes, but that they don't understand how to get better. They feel stuck. They feel like they just can't figure it out. They don't know how to learn, and they're going to disengage. So that's a problem to look for. Another is like, I don't know why I failed. That's also a problem, not getting enough feedback, not understanding what had happened or what you were supposed to do or what went wrong. I was unlucky. So sometimes that can work out, like in the spin round, I'm spinning a wheel. I expect to maybe be unlucky, right? That's a transaction that as a user I am engaging in and expecting. But if there's a transaction where I'm not expecting luck and somehow I feel unlucky, then that's a problem. The game cheated, right? This is an idea that I feel like the game caused me to mess up, not myself. What you really want is that people say, oops, I made a mistake. Okay, let me figure out what I need to do to change my strategy and move on. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is that I feel like a lot of times us designers, we tend to feel like failure perception is a problem for our users, right? And it's really important to understand that this is a visceral feeling, not a logical one. Again, we are designing in a system one, right? We're designing in intuition and instinct. And so if there's a perception of these things that show up, it's really easy for designers to be like, no, that's the user, whatever, they just don't get it. Instead of realizing, oh no, actually there's something wrong with my design. Let me go back and see how I can make it clearer, see how I can make the challenges seem more attainable, that kind of thing. So it's a really important thing to think about. All right, so toss up. This is a fun way to pose a real hard challenge and to also use it as assessment. The hint system is built in, one letter at a time, and you can change the order, the pacing, all in the admin portal. It's very, very flexible to allow you to really fine tune, if you so choose, all aspects of this game. It starts off challenging, but it gets easier. So that's why it's really great for really hard and challenging content. And you can write very detailed categories. Again, people are going to read it and remember it because that's where their focus is, unlike the spin game. Okay, questions here.
It doesn't look like we have any questions about that round.
Okay.
You just
Great.
explained it too well.
So I'll move on to the bonus round. And the bonus round, it's kind of hard to, it's also important to know how this operates in the game show. And bonus round is kind of like the gate, the final challenge before someone walks off with a large sum of money. So it's actually designed to stump players. What you're looking at is two charts of somebody who analyzed like 15 seasons of Wheel of Fortune and put in like letter probabilities and realized that the people making these puzzles were actually purposely trying to find words that didn't map with like the regular English language to kind of stump people. And the reason is you don't want everyone walking off your game show with like $1 million, right? You're gonna be broke or you're gonna go in the red pretty quickly. So there's a reason why they made this round, you know, as a way to kind of stump people. But as learning designers, we probably don't want that outcome, right? And again, the reason why it's important to think about in terms of how it's used in the game is so that we can understand how our content is going to fit in there. And the things to really take away from this is that, again, it's not like trivia. If you just use that difficulty axis in terms of like, here's the question and here's the answer, you also have to think to use or to understand the power of the letters that you provide, that you're giving them, the player beforehand, and the letters that you allow players to choose. Those are all going to really determine the difficulty of that puzzle. And again, it doesn't mean that like making it too hard or making it too easy is a problem. It's just that you need to be aware of that so you can fine tune that difficulty to just be above the comfort zone for your users. Again, you want to stay in that flow state. Also know that your players can get stuck in this mode. Unlike toss-up where the letters are revealed over time, after the letters that are revealed at the beginning, that's all you get, right? Then you're kind of sitting there and thinking about the puzzle for, 40 seconds. It's not that long, but it is possible that a user could be like, I have no idea, right? So just keep in mind that that is a possible outcome. And as such, you probably want to think about bonus round in terms of a content challenge being less than what a toss-up is. So in terms of its placement, it'll be between the spin round, which is just kind of like a fun break introduction. You can use bonus round to kind of build up to the toss-up, but usually you would want a little bit easier content in bonus round than you would for toss-up. So bonus round. You can use this data for assessment. It's not quite as clean just because there is a little bit of guessing, but before the puzzle, and that relationship might skew the results. But it's good for knowledge checks, and but you would probably want to again make it a little easier just because of how it's designed. You can write clear descriptive categories. Players are going to read that just like toss up. They're going to focus on that because that's the call to action. And then just keep in mind that the letters that you choose, the letters you let players choose, are going to greatly impact that difficulty. So when you're creating this content in Wheel of Fortune, even regardless of the rounds, just make sure that you're playing through that content. Put in your content, play the game, see how it feels, and then you can change those different levers that we give you in the CMS just so you can really fine tune it to your needs. But this is also the great thing about Wheel of Fortune. We really let you use those rounds to kind of map this perfect kind of experience of ups and downs right through that flow channel to keep your users really engaged and have that learning content feel nice and comfortable inside of the game. Okay. Questions?
All right, we had one question about whether or not these games can be played on mobile devices.
Yes, they can.
Awesome. So your learners can play games everywhere, at work, at home, anywhere they want. One attendee was wondering if you could show us the back end, a little bit of like actually building the game, just to show how easy it is. I know we gave kind of a preview of that at the beginning.
Yeah, so I'm done with my presentation and I'll give it to Carrie or.
Yeah, you can give it to me. Still have that open, so.
Great.
Oops. Did you give me permission to share?
I will, there you go. You should have it.
Yep, now I have
We're
it.
just kind of building up the suspense.
So this was where we left off. I'll show you again. I'm just being mindful of time. I know we only have a couple of minutes. So basically in here you have each bar is a different puzzle or level of information in the game. So a spin round looks like this. And you can see this is where I typed in all those extra words, but you can get rid of those. So basically this is just about typing your content right in and it'll format it for you. So you don't have to worry about, counting letters and figuring out exactly where it goes. It will do that for you. And these are the levers that Julia was talking about, like whether or not you want to include the solve bonus, or set the virtual helpers. Toss up is pretty fun too, because this is where you can shuffle it and decide the order that you want things to go in, and then you can see how it plays over time.
You can
And then the
actually drag
bonus round
levers
levers
around
again.
too.
Oh, that's true. You can. I'll go back there so I can show. We'll go to the second toss up and drag it around so you can see how you can move them that way. So if you really, really, really wanted them to start with the M, you could drag the M all the way to the beginning, and then that would be the first one that would show up. And then in the bonus round, same thing. This is where you do the letters. Here, instead of RSTLNE, we just picked RTLE just to show you could do. And then you have different, remember, when you're watching the show, they put up RSTLNE. If you're older like me, they used to always just guess RSTLNE, so they gave up and just gave that to them at the beginning. And now you can also pick up to 3 consonants and another vowel, but you can set that here. If you decide that you want to do it old school, you can just put 0 and not give them anything, not give them any other guesses. So that is also an option there. And then this is where you can set the value of the puzzle. So if you have a really difficult puzzle, you can award a little more money. If it's an easier puzzle, you can award a little bit less. The other thing, and I'm not sure if this was included in something that people wanted to see, but you can post this as a URL for people to register and play, or you can package it as a SCORM file and upload that to your LMS. So it gives you a couple different options.
Carrie, you read their mind. That was the question. The next question that I was about to read is, how do players get to the games? So yes, and I believe you can also, this works with, you can put it in like a Lectora project, I think. Just a little shout out for Lectora as well. But yeah, as you can see, it is super easy. I have built a few training arcade games. I don't even watch the instructional videos. I just go in there and I start building, and they're very easy to use. We had one comment, I didn't know Wheel of Fortune used to not actually give them RSTLNE.
Oh, somebody's younger than me.
Carrie,
They did,
you're a
and they also
font of
gave out.
knowledge.
They also gave out Dalmatians. You could buy a Dalmatian.
And that's actually where they switched the strategies, because RSTLE is the letter combinations for the most frequently used, which is why everybody guesses them. So when they switched it over, they actually purposely picked out words that focused around O and C and M. So it changed the strategy a bit.
Tricky. They are so tricky. I have learned a lot about Wheel of Fortune today during this webinar. All right, that is all the questions we have. So I will take the screen back and all right. So of course, if you are super excited about Wheel of Fortune and want to try and make your own for your next learning project, we do offer a free trial. So you can try it before you buy it and see how awesome it is, see how it works with your LMS. Your learners will be absolutely delighted if you do so. So I will post the link to that right now in the chat, and it will also, of course, be in the email with the webinar recording that I will send out to everyone tomorrow. Carrie and Julia, this has been absolutely fantastic. I know I learned a lot based on the chat. Our attendees also learned a lot, so we thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us today. We hope to see you on the next webinar.